The silverware clattered against fine china as the entire restaurant fell silent. Joy Callahan stood motionless, expensive red wine dripping down her pristine white uniform, her eyes locked with the most dangerous man in Westport Harbor. Andrew Vega, shipping magnate, respected businessman, and whispered kingpin of the city's underworld, had just finished berating her in front of the entire dining room of the Silver Spoon. What happened next would change both their lives forever. "You don't get to speak to me that way," Joy said, her voice calm but unflinching. "Not here, not anywhere." She had no idea who he was. No idea that men had disappeared for showing him less disrespect. No idea that her moment of courage would spark an obsession in a man who hadn't felt anything real in years. The Silver Spoon was Westport Harbor's premier dining establishment, a place where reservations were made months in advance and where the city's elite came to be seen. The waterfront restaurant, with its panoramic ocean views and crystal chandeliers, was a far cry from the small diner where Joy had started waitressing at 16. Tonight had begun like any other Friday night. The restaurant was fully booked, the kitchen was running smoothly, and Joy was handling her section with practiced efficiency. Until table 12. Until Andrew Vega. His reservation had been for 7 o'clock. He'd arrived at 7:30 without apology, demanding his reserved table, which had already been given to another party. Diana Miller, the manager, had scrambled to accommodate him, displacing a young couple celebrating an anniversary to a lesser table near the kitchen. Joy had watched it all with quiet disapproval. She'd seen entitled customers before, but something about this man's cold arrogance had immediately set her on edge. When Diana had assigned her to his table, Joy had mentally prepared herself for a difficult customer. What she hadn't prepared for was the wine incident. A simple accident, another server bumping into her as she passed the bar, had sent a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon splashing onto Mr. Vega's impeccable white shirt and custom suit. His reaction had been immediate and volcanic. "Are you completely incompetent?" he demanded, rising to his feet as the wine spread across the expensive fabric. "Do you have any idea what this suit costs?" Joy had immediately grabbed a napkin, professional apologies already forming on her lips, when his next words stopped her cold. "This is what happens when restaurants hire people who should be serving at fast food joints. Clearly you're not qualified to work anywhere requiring basic coordination." The restaurant had gone silent. Every diner, every server, even the bartender had frozen, eyes darting between the furious man and the wine-splattered waitress. Diana had started rushing over, panic written across her face, but Joy hadn't moved. She'd straightened her spine, met Andrew Vega's icy blue eyes directly, and in a voice that carried clearly through the hushed dining room, said, "You don't get to speak to me that way. Not here, not anywhere." Now, as the silence stretched between them, Joy could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, but she kept her expression neutral, her gaze steady. She'd spent too many years being talked down to by her alcoholic father, by entitled customers, by people who thought a uniform made her somehow less than them. Andrew Vega's expression shifted from outrage to something more complex. He tilted his head slightly, studying her as if she were a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "Do you know who I am?" he asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Someone who needs to learn basic manners, apparently," Joy replied before she could stop herself. Someone at a nearby table gasped. Diana had finally reached them, her face ashen. "Mr. Vega, please accept our most sincere apologies," Diana stammered. "The wine will be complimentary, of course, and we'd be happy to cover any cleaning expenses for your suit. Joy, go to the back immediately and—" "No," Andrew interrupted, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. "She stays." He sat back down, smoothing his ruined napkin across his lap with deliberate calm. "I'd like to continue my dinner." With this server, Diana looked as though she might faint. "Of course, Mr. Vega, whatever you prefer." As Diana retreated, Joy found herself alone with Andrew Vega, the restaurant gradually resuming its normal buzz of conversation, though she could feel curious glances still being cast their way. "You're either very brave or very foolish," Andrew said, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear. "Most people in this city know better than to speak to me that way." "I'm not most people," Joy replied, pulling out her notepad. "And I'm here to do a job. So, would you like to hear tonight's specials? Or should I give you a few minutes with the menu?" The corner of Andrew's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but something close to it. "The specials, please." Joy described the chef's offerings with professional precision, taking his order without further incident. As she turned to leave, his voice stopped her once more. "What's your name?" "Joy. Joy Callahan." "Joy," he repeated, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. I'll remember that. Something in his tone sent a shiver down her spine, not entirely from fear. She nodded once and walked away, aware of his eyes following her every step. In the kitchen, Izzy grabbed her arm, pulling her into the staff corner. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "That's Andrew Vega. He owns half the waterfront, and the other half is too scared to defy him." "So?" Joy said, though her bravado was beginning to fade as adrenaline ebbed. "So," Izzy lowered her voice further, "there are rumors about what happens to people who cross him. Bad rumors. Boats leaving the harbor in the middle of the night. Competitors suddenly selling businesses at rock-bottom prices. You don't mess with him, Joy. It was just wine, Izzy. He'll get over it." But as the evening progressed, Joy noticed something strange. Andrew Vega's demeanor had completely changed. He was polite, even charming, leaving a tip that made her eyes widen, along with a business card bearing only a phone number. "If you ever need anything," he said as he stood to leave. "Day or night. Anything at all." Joy should have thrown the card away. Instead, she slipped it into her pocket, telling herself it meant nothing. She had no way of knowing that this night, this spilled wine, this moment of defiance, would set in motion events that would change the course of her life and the balance of power in Westport Harbor forever. The next morning, Joy woke to frantic pounding on her apartment door. She stumbled out of bed, blinking sleep from her eyes as she checked the time, 6:48 a.m. Who on earth would be here this early on a Saturday? She opened the door to find Diana Miller, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her normally perfect makeup smudged with what looked like tears. "Diana? What's wrong? What's wrong?" Diana pushed past Joy into the small apartment. "What's wrong is that you insulted Andrew Vega." "The Andrew Vega? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Joy closed the door, pulling her robe tighter around herself. "I didn't insult him. I stood up for myself after he insulted me. There's a difference. Not with men like him." Diana collapsed onto Joy's worn couch, burying her face in her hands. "He's going to shut us down. Or worse, the silver spoon is finished." "That's ridiculous," Joy said, though a thread of unease wound through her. "It was just wine on a shirt. He can't possibly." Her phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. "You've cost Diana a night's sleep. My apologies. Please assure her. The silver spoon is in no danger. In fact, I've made a reservation for tonight. Table 12, 8 p.m. I hope you'll be working. AV." Joy stared at her phone, then wordlessly passed it to Diana, whose eyes widened as she read. "How does he have your number?" Diana whispered. Joy shook her head, equally baffled. "I have no idea." Diana handed the phone back, her expression shifting from terror to calculated speculation. "He wants to see you again. This is unusual." "What do you mean, unusual?" "Andrew Vega doesn't make return reservations the next night. He doesn't text waitresses. And he certainly doesn't apologize to anyone." Diana stood, suddenly businesslike. "You're working tonight, table 12. I wasn't scheduled. You are now." Diana headed for the door, then paused. "Joy, be careful. Whatever game he's playing, just remember who he is." After Diana left, Joy sat on her couch, Andrew's business card still in her uniform pocket from the night before. She pulled it out, running her thumb over the embossed lettering. Just a phone number, no company name, no title. Her phone buzzed again. "By the way, how did you get this number?" "Jay," the response came almost immediately. "I have resources, nothing to worry about. AV." But that was precisely what worried her. Joy's tiny apartment was in one of Westport Harbor's older neighborhoods, once the heart of the fishing community, now gradually being gentrified as waterfront property values soared. She'd fought hard for this independence, this space that belonged only to her and Ryan when he was home from university. She made coffee, staring out the window at the sliver of ocean visible between buildings. Her brother would be stopping by later today, picking up the check she'd written for his textbooks this semester. She'd have to be at work by then. At the Silver Spoon, serving Andrew Vega. Her phone rang, Ryan calling. "Morning, genius," she answered with forced cheer. "Hey, sis." His voice sounded strained. "Listen, I hate to ask, but is there any way you could make that check a little bigger? There's a field trip for my engineering class to visit this structural project in Boston, and it's not covered by my scholarship. And..." "How much?" Joy interrupted, mentally calculating her bank balance. $300. I know it's a lot, but it's really important for networking and..." "It's fine, Ryan." It wasn't fine. It would clean out her small savings, but she'd make it work. She always did. "I'll have it when you come by. You're the best, Joy." I don't know what I'd do without you." After hanging up, Joy sighed, opening her laptop to transfer the extra money. The scholarships covered most of Ryan's education, but there were always extra expenses: books, supplies, trips. Their parents had left nothing but debt when they died in the car crash 3 years ago, and Joy had been determined that Ryan would finish his degree, no matter what it took. What it took, usually, was extra shifts and exhaustion. At work that evening, the Silver Spoon hummed with energy and an unusual number of curious glances directed at Joy. "Word got around about last night," Izzy explained as they folded napkins in the prep area. "Everyone's talking about the waitress who stood up to Andrew Vega and lived to tell the tale." "You make it sound like I faced down a monster." Izzy raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you?" Before Joy could respond, Diana appeared, looking considerably more composed than she had that morning. "He's here," she said tersely. "Table 12, as requested. Joy, remember professional, polite, and for God's sake, no more confrontations." Andrew Vega sat alone at his table, casually elegant in a charcoal suit that made his eyes appear even more intensely blue. Unlike other patrons, who typically occupied themselves with phones or companions, his attention seemed entirely focused on the room, observing everything or perhaps waiting for someone. When Joy approached, he smiled a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. "Good evening, Mr. Vega," Joy said, keeping her voice neutral. "Welcome back to the Silver Spoon." "Andrew, please," he replied. "And I should apologize for my behavior yesterday. It was unwarranted." The apology caught her off guard. "Thank you. I appreciate that. I rarely encounter people willing to stand their ground with me," he continued, studying her with that same intense curiosity from the night before. "It's refreshing." Joy didn't know how to respond to that. "Would you like to hear tonight's specials?" "Actually, I'd like to know more about you, Joy Callahan." She stiffened. "I'm here to take your order, Mr. Vega, not provide my biography." Again, that flicker of a smile. "Fair enough. I'll have the sea bass then. And perhaps another server might be willing to tell me about the woman brave enough to challenge me in my own city." "Your city?" The words slipped out before she could stop them. Andrew leaned forward slightly. "Figure of speech. Though I do own a significant portion of the waterfront district, including, as of this morning, this restaurant." Joy felt the color drain from her face. "You bought the Silver Spoon? Because of last night? Let's call it a sudden interest in the restaurant business." His eyes never left hers. "Don't worry, I've assured Diana her position is secure. As is yours. In fact, I've given strict instructions that your employment here is to be considered permanent. Unless you choose to leave, of course." The implication was clear. He had purchased an entire restaurant just to ensure he could see her again. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, Joy felt a complicated mixture of alarm and something else, something she refused to acknowledge. "Is there anything else you'd like with your sea bass?" she asked, desperately clinging to professionalism. "Just answers. Eventually," Andrew replied. "But those can wait until you're ready to provide them." As Joy walked away from the table, she felt unsteady, as if the ground beneath her feet had shifted. In the span of 24 hours, she had somehow caught the attention of the most powerful and possibly dangerous man in Westport Harbor. And despite every warning, every instinct for self-preservation, she couldn't deny that some part of her was intrigued by the mystery of Andrew Vega, the man who would buy a restaurant just to ensure he could see a waitress again. What she didn't see was the dark figure watching from a car across the street, observing Andrew's unusual interest with calculating eyes. Ivan Kane had been looking for leverage against Andrew Vega for years. Perhaps he had just found it in the form of a waitress in a white uniform who didn't know the danger she was in. Over the next 2 weeks, Andrew Vega became a regular at the Silver Spoon. Always alone, always requesting Joy as his server, always leaving tips that bordered on obscene, the staff had begun to whisper, theories spreading through the kitchen like wildfire. "He's obsessed with her," Izzy said one evening as they restocked the bar. "It's creepy." "It's just business," Joy insisted, though she wasn't entirely convinced. "He bought the restaurant. He's checking on his investment." "Right. And I'm the Queen of England." Izzy rolled her eyes. "Investors don't show up 5 nights a week and stare at waitresses like they're trying to memorize every detail." Joy couldn't deny the attention. Andrew watched her not in a leering way, but with genuine fascination, as if she were a rare specimen he was studying. And despite her initial wariness, she'd begun to find herself looking forward to their brief interactions. He'd started asking her one personal question each visit. Simple things at first. Where she grew up right here in Westport Harbor. Her favorite color deep green, like the ocean before a storm. Whether she enjoyed working at the restaurant, it paid the bills. She'd begun asking questions in return, curious despite herself. Tonight, as she delivered his usual scotch, he surprised her. "Join me," he said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. The restaurant was quiet, Tuesday's late dinner service winding down. "I'm working," Joy replied automatically. "I own the establishment," Andrew reminded her with that almost smile. "Consider it a paid break." Diana, passing by with a tray of desserts, gave an almost imperceptible nod. Permission granted. Joy hesitated, then sat, feeling strangely self-conscious in her uniform. Up close, Andrew seemed more human, tired eyes belying his confident demeanor, a small scar near his temple that she'd never noticed before. "Why do you keep coming here?" she asked directly, skipping their usual careful dance around personal topics. Andrew considered her, swirling his scotch thoughtfully. "Because you're the first person in 5 years who's spoken to me like I'm just a man, not a—" He trailed off. "Not a what?" "Not someone to be feared or flattered." His blue eyes held hers. "Do you know what people say about me, Joy?" She thought about Izzy's warnings, Diana's fear, the whispers that followed Andrew through the restaurant. "I've heard things. And yet you're sitting here, unafraid. Should I be afraid?" Most people would say yes. His answer was matter of fact, without menace. "I'm not most people." Joy echoed her words from their first encounter. "No," Andrew agreed. "You're not." He studied her face. "You're working 3 jobs, why?" The question caught her off guard. "How did you—" "I notice things. The circles under your eyes, how you check your schedule on breaks. The textbook I saw you reading in the staff room, community college, psychology course." Joy shifted uncomfortably. "My brother's in engineering school. Our parents died 3 years ago. Someone has to make sure he graduates." Something in Andrew's expression softened. "Siblings are precious. I had a brother once." The past tense hung in the air between them. Before Joy could decide whether to ask, Andrew continued. "My question tonight. What would you do if you didn't have to work 3 jobs just to survive?" Joy hadn't allowed herself to think about that in years. Dreams were luxury items she couldn't afford. "I'd finish my degree," she said finally. "Psychology. Maybe become a counselor for kids from difficult backgrounds." Andrew nodded, as if confirming something to himself. "Why children?" "That's 2 questions," Joy pointed out, attempting to lighten the suddenly serious mood. "So it is." Andrew's smile reached his eyes this time. "I'll save it for tomorrow." As Joy stood to return to work, Andrew spoke again. "One last thing. There's a charity gala this Friday at the Westport Harbor Yacht Club. I'd like you to accompany me." Not a question. A statement. "I have to work," Joy said automatically. "No, you don't. I've already spoken with Diana." Joy bristled at his presumption. "You can't just rearrange my life because you own the restaurant." "I apologize." To his credit, Andrew looked genuinely contrite. "That was presumptuous. Let me try again. Would you consider accompanying me to the gala? As my guest, not an employee?" Warning bells sounded in Joy's mind. This was crossing a line from unusual customer to something far more complicated. "Why me?" she asked. Andrew considered the question seriously. "Because in a room full of people who want something from me, you'd be the only person who sees past the name, the reputation, the power, because I find that valuable." Joy should have said no. Every instinct screamed caution. Instead, she found herself asking, "What would I even wear to something like that?" Andrew's expression brightened. "Is that a yes?" I'll think about it. I'll take it." He scribbled an address on a napkin. "If you decide to come, go here tomorrow. Tell them I sent you. They'll take care of everything." After her shift ended, Joy sat in her car, staring at the napkin with the address to what she assumed was a clothing store. She knew she should throw it away, draw a boundary, protect herself from whatever game Andrew Vega was playing. Instead, she tucked it carefully into her wallet. The next morning, Ryan stopped by her apartment, his face tense with worry. "What's wrong?" Joy asked immediately. "Nothing," he answered too quickly. "Just stressed about finals." Joy knew her brother. "Ryan, don't lie to me." He sighed, collapsing onto her couch. "Remember Jason from my study group? His dad works at the docks. He told me you've been seen with Andrew Vega." "I work at his restaurant," Joy said carefully. "No, Joy. He said Vega comes in specifically to see you, that he bought the restaurant because of you." Ryan sat forward, Do you have any idea who he is? What he does? He's a businessman. Shipping. Real estate. He's dangerous, Ryan interrupted. Jason says his dad has seen things at the docks. Containers that don't go through customs. Meetings on boats in the middle of the night. People who cross him disappear. A chill ran down Joy's spine. Those are just rumors. Are they? Ryan looked at her with their mother's worried eyes. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't get involved with him. Joy thought about the yacht club invitation, the napkin in her wallet. I promise to be careful, she said, unable to make the broader promise. Ryan seemed satisfied, changing the subject to his upcoming finals. After he left, Joy stood in front of her bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. Was she being naive? Foolish? Or was there something about Andrew Vega that others couldn't see, something beneath the power and reputation? She made her decision. Grabbing her keys, she drove to the address on the napkin. It wasn't a clothing store. It was Westport Harbor's most exclusive boutique, where a single dress could cost more than her monthly rent. I think there's been a mistake, Joy told the elegantly dressed woman who greeted her. Are you Joy Callahan? When Joy nodded, the woman smiled. Then there's no mistake. Mr. Vega called personally. We've been expecting you. What followed was surreal. A private fitting room. Champagne she didn't drink. Dresses brought in one after another. No price tags in sight. The staff's deference made Joy uncomfortable. Yet she couldn't deny the thrill of trying on garments more beautiful than anything she'd ever owned. She chose the simplest one, an emerald green gown that matched the ocean color she'd told Andrew she loved. As the boutique staff boxed it up, along with shoes and accessories, Joy asked the question she'd been dreading. I should discuss payment. The woman looked genuinely confused. Everything has been arranged by Mr. Vega. I can't accept. He was quite specific, Miss Callahan. The items have already been purchased. Whether you take them or not, they're paid for. Joy left with the boxes, feeling both uneasy and exhilarated. She was stepping into something she didn't fully understand. A world of power and privilege she'd only glimpsed from behind a serving tray. What she didn't see was the black sedan following her home, or the man inside taking photographs of her carrying Andrew Vega's gifts into her apartment building. Ivan Kane smiled as he reviewed the photos. The untouchable Andrew Vega had finally revealed a weakness. Now it was just a matter of deciding how best to exploit it. You're actually going. Izzy leaned against Joy's bathroom door, watching her friend apply makeup with uncharacteristic care. To a gala, with Andrew Vega. It's not a date, Joy insisted, though her fluttering stomach suggested otherwise. It's networking. Right. Networking in a dress that probably costs more than my car. Izzy picked up the emerald gown hanging on the closet door, running her fingers over the fine fabric. Joy, be honest with yourself. You're attracted to him. I'm curious, Joy corrected, though she couldn't quite meet Izzy's eyes in the mirror. There's a difference. Curious enough to ignore everything everyone's saying about him? Joy set down her mascara, turning to face her friend. What if what everyone says isn't the whole truth? What if there's more to him? What if there isn't? Izzy countered. What if he's exactly what people say? Dangerous, controlling, involved in God knows what. This isn't a movie, Joy. Bad men don't always get redeemed by the love of a good woman. The words stung because they hit close to a fear Joy had been trying to ignore. Was she being naive? Creating a fantasy around a man who had simply shown her unexpected attention? I'll be careful, she promised, the same words she'd given Ryan. Izzy sighed, relenting. The dress is beautiful. You'll outshine everyone there. An hour later, Joy barely recognized herself in the mirror. The emerald gown fit perfectly, making her eyes look more green than brown. Her dark hair was swept up, accentuating the elegant line of her neck. She looked like someone who belonged in Andrew Vega's world, a thought both thrilling and terrifying. When the doorbell rang, she expected a driver. Instead, Andrew himself stood there, breathtaking in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. For a moment, he simply stared at her, something almost vulnerable crossing his usually controlled features. You look. He seemed to search for the right word. Extraordinary. Joy felt heat rise to her cheeks. Thank you. For the dress. For everything. It's too much. It's not enough, he replied softly, offering his arm. Shall we? The Westport Harbor Yacht Club was transformed for the gala lights strung across the docks, white tents erected on the lawn, the city's elite in black tie and evening gowns. As Andrew guided Joy from his sleek black Aston Martin, she felt eyes following them, whispers trailing in their wake. Everyone's staring, she murmured. Because I'm with the most beautiful woman here, Andrew said, his hand warm against the small of her back. Because you're never seen with anyone, she corrected. Izzy says you always come to these events alone. Andrew's eyebrow raised slightly. You've been asking about me. Researching, Joy clarified, though she felt caught. Curiosity. A dangerous trait, he warned, but his eyes were warm. Though one I share. Inside the main tent, the gala was in full swing, a live band playing tasteful jazz, waitstaff circulating with champagne, auction items displayed along one wall. Joy recognized several regular customers from the Silver Spoon, now regarding her with barely concealed surprise and speculation. Andrew kept her close, his hand never leaving her back or arm, as if afraid she might disappear. He introduced her to various business associates, city officials, and society figures, each interaction revealing another facet of his influence in Westport Harbor. Andrew Vega with a date, commented an older man with shrewd eyes. The world must be ending. Simply evolving, Senator, Andrew replied smoothly. Joy. This is Senator William Townsend. Senator. Joy Callahan. Callahan, the senator repeated, studying her. Any relation to Martin Callahan from the Harbor Commission? My father, Joy confirmed, surprised. Though he passed away 3 years ago. Ah, yes. The accident. Terrible business. The senator's expression held something Joy couldn't quite read. Caution, perhaps. He was a principled man. Stubborn, but principled. Before Joy could ask what he meant, the senator excused himself, leaving her with more questions than answers. Her father had worked as a harbor master, a job she'd always considered ordinary. Why would a senator remember him? Your father worked for the Harbor Commission? Andrew asked as they moved toward their assigned dinner table. Yes. Why? Just curious. But something in his tone suggested more. Their table included Diana and her husband, a bank executive and his wife, and to Joy's surprise, Detective Brian Harper of the Westport Harbor Police. Harper's eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Joy on Andrew's arm. Miss Callahan, he greeted her. Interesting company you're keeping. Detective Harper and I have a professional relationship, Andrew explained, his tone cooling noticeably. He occasionally asks questions, I occasionally answer. The tension between the two men was palpable. Joy remembered Ryan's warnings, Izzy's concerns, the whispers about Andrew's business dealings. How do you know Detective Harper? Andrew asked after the officer moved to the bar. He investigated my parents' accident, Joy explained. He was kind, thorough. Andrew's expression turned thoughtful. Before he could respond, the charity auction began. Joy watched, amazed, as astronomical sums were bid for art, vacation packages, and experiences. When a semester scholarship to Westport University came up, Joy's attention sharpened. Ryan could use additional funding for his graduate studies. The bidding quickly escalated beyond anything she could dream of affording. Without thinking, she sighed softly. Something interests you? Andrew asked. My brother, she explained. He's finishing his engineering degree. A scholarship like that would help with graduate school. Andrew studied her for a moment, then raised his paddle. The auctioneer nodded in his direction. Mr. Vega bids $20,000, Joy gasped. Andrew, no, that's too much. 30,000, called another voice. Joy turned to see Ivan Kane, a sharp-featured man she recognized from news coverage of waterfront development disputes. Andrew's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 50,000, he countered without hesitation. A hush fell over the room. Ivan Kane smiled thinly. 60, $100,000, Andrew stated calmly, his eyes never leaving Kane's. The room erupted in murmurs. Even the auctioneer seemed stunned. 100,000 going once, twice. Sold to Mr. Vega. Joy stared at Andrew in shock. Why would you do that? Because it matters to you, he answered simply. And because it displeased Kaine. You can't just... I can, Andrew interrupted gently. And I did. Consider it a gift for your brother. He took her hand. No strings attached, Joy. I promise. She wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence. But the thought of Ryan's future made her hesitate. I don't understand you, Andrew Vega. Few people try, he replied, something vulnerable flashing in his eyes. Would you like to get some air? On the yacht club's deck, overlooking moonlit water, Joy felt both out of place and exactly where she wanted to be. Andrew stood beside her, their shoulders nearly touching, a comfortable silence between them. Why me? She finally asked the question that had been haunting her for weeks. Of all the people in Westport Harbor, why am I standing here with you? Andrew considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Because you saw me, he said finally. Not my reputation, not my wealth, not what I could do for you. You saw me and decided I needed to be put in my place. His smile was self-deprecating. And you were right. People are afraid of you, Joy said quietly. Are they right to be? The question hung between them, weighty with implications. Andrew turned to face her fully, his expression more open than she'd ever seen it. I've done things I'm not proud of, he admitted. Made choices most people wouldn't understand. But since that night at the restaurant, I've found myself wanting to be someone who deserves your good opinion. Before Joy could respond, Yuri Torres appeared at the doorway, his expression urgent. Mr. Vega, there's a situation requiring your immediate attention. Andrew's demeanor changed instantly, warmth replaced by calculated control. Excuse me, Joy. I'll return shortly. As he walked away with Yuri, Detective Harper emerged from the shadows of the deck. Careful, Miss Callahan, he said quietly. You're playing with fire. Joy straightened her spine. I can take care of myself. Can you? Harper stepped closer. Did you know your father was investigating Vega's shipping operations before he died? That his car accident happened the night before he was scheduled to meet with federal authorities? The world seemed to tilt beneath Joy's feet. What are you saying? I'm saying there are no coincidences in Andrew Vega's world. Harper handed her a card. When you're ready to know the truth, call me. As Harper disappeared back into the gala, Joy stood frozen, the detective's card burning in her hand like a brand. Everything she thought she knew about her father, about Andrew, about the past 3 weeks suddenly thrown into question. And somewhere in the yacht club, Andrew Vega was handling a situation that she knew nothing about. The card felt heavy in Joy's hand as she stared out at the moonlit harbor. Detective Harper's words echoed in her mind, twisting what had been a magical evening into something uncertain and frightening. Her father, investigating Andrew? The accident connected to his work? It seemed impossible. Martin Callahan had been a by-the-books harbor master, dedicated, honest, but hardly an investigator. He and Joy's mother had died when their car went off the coastal road during a storm. A tragic accident, not whatever Harper was implying. Yet the detective's certainty had shaken her. Joy? Andrew's voice startled her. He had returned, his expression carefully neutral, though tension radiated from him. Is everything all right? She slipped Harper's card into her clutch before turning. Fine, just needed some air. Andrew studied her face, clearly not believing her. Something's changed. What happened while I was gone? For a moment, Joy considered confronting him with Harper's allegations, but staring into Andrew's eyes, she found herself hesitating. What if Harper was wrong? Or worse, what if he was right? Nothing important, she lied, forcing a smile. Just feeling a bit overwhelmed by all of this. She gestured to the gala, the yacht club, her borrowed finery. Andrew stepped closer, his fingers lightly brushing her bare shoulder. The touch sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. Would you like to leave? Yes, she thought. Run away, get distance, think. Please, she said instead. They left the gala without fanfare, Andrew guiding her through a side exit to avoid curious eyes. In his car, the silence felt different, now charged with unspoken questions and doubts. I've upset you somehow, Andrew said, as they drove along the coastal road, the same road where her parents' accident had occurred. Joy realized with a chill. Detective Harper, she began, then faltered. Andrew's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. What did Harper say to you? The edge in his voice made Joy's decision for her. Nothing specific. Just a general warning about you. And now you're afraid of me. It wasn't a question. Should I be? Joy countered, watching his profile in the dim light. Andrew was quiet for a long moment, navigating the winding road with practiced ease. Harper has been trying to build a case against me for years, he finally said. He sees shadows where there are none, because it's easier than accepting that some criminals operate beyond his reach. Are you a criminal, Andrew? The directness of her question seemed to surprise him. By some definitions. His honesty was unexpected. My business interests are diverse. Not all of them would withstand the scrutiny of law enforcement. Joy's heart sank. So the rumors were true, but I have lines I don't cross, he continued. Rules I follow. I don't deal in drugs or weapons. I don't hurt innocent people. His voice hardened. And I had nothing to do with your parents' accident. The fact that he knew exactly what Harper had implied sent a chill through Joy. How did you— Because Harper has tried this before, Andrew interrupted. 3 years ago, he approached your brother with the same insinuations. Ryan didn't believe him either. Joy gasped. Ryan knew about this? He was trying to protect you from more pain, Andrew explained. Harper has a vendetta against me, and he's not above using you to get to me. Joy's mind reeled. Ryan had never mentioned this. But then, Ryan had warned her about Andrew, had he not? Told her to stay away. Was it because he believed Harper? Or because he didn't? Stop the car, Joy said suddenly. Please, Andrew. I need to think. Andrew pulled over at a scenic overlook. The lights of Westport Harbor spread below them like fallen stars. The ocean stretched dark and endless beyond. The same waters her father had patrolled for 20 years. I don't know what to believe, she admitted, her voice small. Andrew turned in his seat to face her. In the dim light, his expression was more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. Then let me show you something. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a thin file, offering it to her. This is what your father was working on before he died. With trembling fingers, Joy opened the file. Inside were shipping manifests, photographs of cargo containers, handwritten notes in her father's familiar scrawl, names, dates, discrepancies highlighted in yellow. What is this? She whispered. Your father discovered a human trafficking operation using Westport Harbor, Andrew explained quietly. Young women from Eastern Europe being smuggled in shipping containers. He was gathering evidence, preparing to take it to the FBI. Joy looked up, confusion and dread mingling in her chest. If you have this file, because I've been continuing his work, Andrew said. The operation isn't mine, Joy. It's Ivan Kaney's. Your father discovered it, and I believe Kane had him killed to protect himself. That's why you hate Kane, Joy realized. That's why you bid against him tonight. Partly, Andrew acknowledged. Though seeing you smile when I won the scholarship was reward enough. Joy stared at the file in her lap, her father's handwriting blurring through unshed tears. Why wouldn't Harper tell me this? Why accuse you instead? Because Kane has him in his pocket, Andrew said grimly. Half the city officials in Westport Harbor take his money. It's why your father came to me in the first place. I was the only person with enough power to help him. My father came to you? Joy couldn't imagine her straight-laced father dealing with someone like Andrew. We met 3 times, Andrew confirmed. The last time was the night before the accident. He gave me copies of everything he had. He was going to the FBI the next day. Andrew's jaw tightened. He never made it. Joy closed the file, emotions overwhelming her. Grief for her father, fresh as if he'd died yesterday. Confusion about Andrew's role in all of this. And underneath it all, a growing sense of betrayal by Harper, by Ryan who had kept secrets, by a city that had let her father's killers walk free. I've been building a case against Kane ever since, Andrew continued, slowly, carefully. He's protected, Joy, connected at levels that make him nearly untouchable, but I'm close. With what I have now, what your father started, I can bring him down. Why tell me this now? Joy asked. Andrew's eyes held hers. Because Harper was going to poison you against me, because you deserve the truth, and because, he hesitated, because what I feel for you is real, more real than anything I've felt in years. I couldn't bear for you to hate me based on lies. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Joy found herself reaching for his hand across the console, their fingers intertwining in the darkness. I don't know what to do with all this, she admitted. You don't have to do anything, Andrew assured her. Just know that when I said I wanted to be someone who deserves your good opinion, I meant it. I'm not a good man, Joy, but I'm trying to be better. As they sat there, hands joined, the harbor lights twinkling below, Joy felt herself at a crossroads. Believing Andrew meant accepting that her father's death wasn't an accident, that corruption ran deeper in Westport Harbor than she'd ever imagined, that the man beside her, for all his power and darkness, might be the only one fighting for justice. Not believing him meant walking away from whatever was growing between them, from the first person who had made her feel truly seen in years. Take me home, she finally said. I need time. Andrew nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course. As they drove back toward her apartment, Joy's phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Are you with him? We need to talk. Urgent. Something in the message sent a chill through her. Ryan never texted in all caps. Everything okay? Andrew asked, noticing her expression. Before Joy could respond, headlights flashed behind them bright, aggressive, closing fast. Andrew, she started. I see it, he said tersely, accelerating around a curve. Call Yuri. My phone, speed dial 1. Joy grabbed Andrew's phone from the center console, dialing with shaking hands. As Yuri answered, The vehicle behind them rammed their back bumper. Andrew swore, expertly maintaining control of the car. "Someone's after us," he told Joy, his voice eerily calm. "Hold on." What followed was a terrifying display of driving skill, as Andrew navigated the coastal road at dangerous speeds, the pursuing vehicle staying close behind. Joy relayed their location to Yuri, who promised backup in minutes. "Who is it?" Joy asked, gripping the door handle as they took another curve too fast. "Kaine's men, most likely," Andrew replied, his focus entirely on the road. "He must have seen us leave together, realized you matter to me. I've made you a target. I'm sorry." Before Joy could respond, their pursuers rammed them again, harder this time. The Aston Martin fishtailed, tires squealing as Andrew fought for control. "If anything happens," he said urgently, "there's a gun in the glove compartment. Use it if you have to." Joy stared at him in horror. "Andrew, just get to safety. Promise me." The raw fear in his voice, not for himself, but for her, told Joy everything she needed to know about his feelings. Headlights appeared ahead, 2 black SUVs blocking the road. For a terrifying moment, Joy thought they were trapped between enemies. Then she recognized Yuri jumping from one vehicle, weapon drawn. Andrew executed a perfect handbrake turn, bringing the car to a stop behind Yuri's improvised barricade. The pursuing car skidded to a halt, then reversed rapidly, fleeing back the way it had come. "Stay here," Andrew ordered, squeezing her hand once before exiting the car. Through the windshield, Joy watched him confer with Yuri, both men's expressions grim. When Andrew returned, his face was like stone. "I'm taking you to my house," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "It's secure. You'll be safe there." "My brother," Joy began. "I've already sent men to get Ryan," Andrew assured her. "They'll bring him to us." As they drove away, flanked by Andrew's security vehicles, Joy realized how completely her life had changed in a single evening. She had stepped fully into Andrew Vega's world now, a world of danger, power, and secrets. And despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Andrew's house was not what Joy expected. Instead of a downtown penthouse or waterfront mansion, they drove 30 minutes outside of Westport Harbor to a secluded estate nestled among pine trees. High walls surrounded the property, and Joy counted at least 3 security checkpoints before they reached the main building, a surprisingly warm, modern structure of wood and glass that somehow managed to look both imposing and welcoming. "You live here alone?" Joy asked as Andrew led her inside, the Aston Martin's headlights still illuminating their path through the garage entrance. "With a small staff," Andrew replied, guiding her through a spacious kitchen that looked barely used. "Security, housekeeper, cook. Though they have separate quarters." The interior was unexpectedly comfortable, expensive, certainly, with art on the walls that Joy suspected cost more than her lifetime earnings, but lacking the cold opulence she'd associated with him. Books lined shelves. A fireplace dominated the living room. Large windows looked out onto dark gardens and forest beyond. "It's not what I imagined," Joy admitted. Andrew's expression softened slightly. "What did you imagine? Gold fixtures? Marble statues? Something less livable," she said honestly. That earned a small smile. "I spend enough time in imposing surroundings. Here, I just want to be comfortable." Yuri appeared in the doorway. "Perimeter is secure. We've added extra patrols. Mr. Callahan should be here within the hour." "Thank you, Yuri." Andrew turned to Joy. "Are you hungry? Thirsty?" The normalcy of the question made Joy laugh despite everything. "We just fled an attack, and you're offering me snacks?" "Adrenaline crash is real," Andrew said, his own smile ghost-like but present. "Food helps." In the kitchen, Andrew moved with surprising ease, assembling sandwiches and opening wine while Joy sat at the island counter, still in her emerald gown. The domesticity of the scene felt surreal after the night's revelations and dangers. "You cook?" Joy couldn't keep the surprise from her voice. "Basic survival skills," Andrew replied. "When you grow up with nothing, you learn to take care of yourself." Joy paused with her wine glass halfway to her lips. "You grew up poor?" "My mother cleaned houses for the wealthy in Westport Harbor," Andrew said, his tone matter-of-fact. "My father wasn't in the picture. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in the East District." The revelation stunned Joy. She'd assumed Andrew had always been wealthy, had inherited his empire. "How did you get here?" Andrew finished, setting a sandwich before her. "Hard work initially, then smarter work. Some of it legal, some not. I made choices, Joy. Choices I can't undo." His eyes held hers. "But I've never forgotten what it's like to have nothing. to be invisible to the powerful. Joy thought about their first encounter at the Silver Spoon, how he had looked through her initially, how she had forced him to see her, how everything had changed after that moment. "Is that why you noticed me?" she asked quietly. "Because I reminded you of where you came from?" Andrew considered this. Perhaps. Or perhaps because you showed me who I'd become, someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be on the other side. Before Joy could respond, her phone buzzed with a text. "Ryan again. Where are you? Men came to the apartment. Said you sent them? Did you?" Joy's heart lurched. "Ryan doesn't trust your men." Andrew frowned, reading the message over her shoulder. "Tell him to ask them for the code phrase Harbor Lights. It's what I told them to say." As Joy sent the text, Andrew's phone rang. His expression darkened as he answered. "Vega. When? How many? Keep me informed." He hung up, meeting Joy's worried eyes. "One of my warehouses was just attacked. Professional job. No casualties, but significant damage." "Kane," Joy said, not a question. Andrew nodded grimly. "This is my fault. I showed my hand tonight with you, with the scholarship bid. I made it clear you matter to me. So I'm what? Leverage?" The thought made Joy feel sick. "A weakness," Andrew corrected softly. "One I didn't know I had until recently." Joy's phone buzzed again. "Ryan." They knew the phrase. "Coming with them now. Are you safe?" "I'm safe," she typed back. "With Andrew. We need to talk when you get here." As she set down her phone, Joy became acutely aware of her surroundings. The luxurious kitchen, the armed guards patrolling outside, the dangerous man watching her with concern. How had her life come to this? "You should change," Andrew suggested gently. "I've had clothes brought to the guest room. Nothing fancy, but they should fit." The guest room was elegant but understated. On the bed lay jeans, sweaters, undergarments, even shoes, all in Joy's size. The fact that Andrew had clothes ready for her was both thoughtful and unsettling. Had he planned for her to stay here all along? After showering and changing, Joy felt more herself in jeans and a soft gray sweater. She left her hair down, washing away the gala's glamour along with its illusions. When she returned to the living room, Andrew had also changed into casual clothes, dark jeans, and a simple black sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. He stood by the fireplace, staring into flames that hadn't been lit earlier. The warm light softened his features, highlighting the weariness in his eyes. "Why did you never tell anyone?" Joy asked, stepping into the room. "About my father's investigation? About Kane's involvement?" Andrew turned to her. "Would anyone have believed me? The notorious Andrew Vega accusing a respected businessman of murder? Of human trafficking?" His laugh was bitter. "Harper certainly wouldn't. The FBI would assume I was eliminating competition. So you've been working alone all this time?" "Not entirely. I have contacts, resources, people who owe me favors." He gestured for her to join him by the fire. "I've been building a case against Kine for 3 years, Joy. Gathering evidence, tracking shipments, identifying victims. I'm close, so close to having enough to take to federal authorities even Harper couldn't ignore." Joy studied his face in the firelight, seeing determination and exhaustion in equal measure. "That's why you're in this house in the middle of nowhere, why you keep your distance from people." "It's safer," Andrew agreed. "For everyone, except me," Joy said quietly. "You let me get close." Andrew's gaze was intense, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I tried not to. That first night at the restaurant, I told myself it was just curiosity. A momentary distraction." He stepped closer, close enough that Joy could feel the warmth radiating from him. "But you became more. Something I wasn't prepared for." Joy should have stepped back, should have maintained distance, perspective. Instead, she found herself moving closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Now we keep you and Ryan safe until this is finished." His hand came up, hesitating just before touching her face. "And then, if you still want anything to do with me when you know everything, we can figure out what comes next." Joy made the decision for both of them, closing the distance between them, her hand covering his and bringing it to her cheek. The contact sent electricity through her, Andrew's palm warm against her skin. "I'm already in this, Andrew," she whispered. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the firelight and the unspoken possibility hanging between them. Then the security system chimed, announcing a vehicle at the gate. "Ryan," Andrew said, reluctantly lowering his hand. Minutes later, Ryan burst into the room, his face pale with worry. When he saw Joy, he rushed to her, enfolding her in a tight hug. "Thank God you're okay," he murmured against her hair. When those men showed up at the apartment, "I'm fine," Joy assured him, pulling back to study his face. "But we need to talk. About Dad. About what you didn't tell me." Ryan's expression shifted from relief to wariness. He glanced at Andrew, then back to Joy. "You told her. She deserved to know," Andrew replied evenly. "I deserved to know 3 years ago," Joy interjected, anger suddenly flaring. "When Detective Harper came to you with his theories. When you found out Dad's death wasn't an accident." Ryan's shoulders slumped. "I wanted to protect you, Joy. You were already carrying so much, dropping out of school to support us, working those terrible jobs. How could I add this burden too?" "It wasn't your decision to make," Joy said, fighting back tears. "He was my father too." "I know. I'm sorry." Ryan looked genuinely contrite. "After Harper approached me, I did my own research. That's when I connected the dots to Kane. But by then, you were so determined to build a life for us, to move forward." He ran a hand through his hair, and honestly I was scared. "These are powerful people, Joy. So you warned me away from Andrew instead," Joy realized. "Because you thought he was involved?" "At first," Ryan admitted. "Until I dug deeper and realized he was the only one actually trying to get justice for Dad." He looked at Andrew with reluctant respect, "Though I still think you should stay away from him for other reasons." Andrew's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. "Your concern for your sister is admirable, but unnecessary in this case," says the crime boss with a target on his back, Ryan retorted. "Ryan!" Joy exclaimed. "It's all right," Andrew said. "He's not wrong." He moved to the bar, pouring 3 drinks. "We have a more immediate problem. Kaine knows about Joy now. Tonight's attack proves he's escalating, getting desperate." Ryan accepted a glass, his expression turning serious. "Because you're close to exposing him?" Andrew nodded. "The final piece is a shipping container arriving next week. According to my sources, it contains documentation that will connect Kaine directly to the trafficking operation, financial records, victim details, everything. Once I have that, we go to the FBI. "And in the meantime?" Joy asked. "In the meantime, you both stay here where it's safe," Andrew said firmly. "No work, no school, no contact with the outside world that could be traced." Ryan looked ready to argue, but Joy put a hand on his arm. "He's right. We're safer here." Later, after Ryan had been shown to his room, Joy found Andrew in his study, a book-lined space with a desk covered in papers. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening. "You should rest," he said. "So should you," Joy countered, moving to stand beside his desk. "What are you working on?" Andrew hesitated, then showed her the files spread before him, shipping manifests, financial records, surveillance photos. "The final pieces of the puzzle. If we can prove Kaine's connection to these shipments, connect them to the trafficking operation, we have him." Joy studied the documents, recognizing some of the same notations her father had made in his own files. "I want to help," she said suddenly. Andrew looked up in surprise. "Joy, this is dangerous work." "He killed my father," she said simply. "I have a right to be part of bringing him down." For a long moment, Andrew said nothing, just studied her face as if seeing her for the first time. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Your father would be proud of you," he said softly. "I know I am." As they bent over the files together, shoulders touching, Joy realized that somehow, against all logic and warnings, she had found her place beside a man the world feared, fighting for justice her father had died to achieve. Whatever came next, whatever dangers awaited, she would face them with her eyes open. No more secrets. No more fear. For the first time in 3 years, Joy Callahan felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 3 days passed in Andrew's secluded estate. 3 days of poring over documents, connecting threads, and building the case against Ivan Kane. 3 days of Joy and Andrew working side by side, their initial wariness giving way to a partnership neither had expected. Joy discovered Andrew was methodical, brilliant, and surprisingly patient, qualities that had likely contributed to his rise to power. He approached the investigation like a chess master, seeing connections others might miss, anticipating Kane's moves before they happened. For his part, Andrew seemed genuinely impressed by Joy's quick mind and attention to detail. Her background in psychology gave her insights into the trafficking operation that complemented his knowledge of shipping logistics and financial trails. "Look at this," Joy said on the afternoon of the 3rd day, pointing to a pattern in the manifest dates. These shipments all arrived during harbor master shift changes when supervision would be at its minimum. Andrew leaned over her shoulder, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Good catch. Someone with insider knowledge of harbor operations planned this. My father would have noticed, Joy said softly. That's why they targeted him. Andrew's hand covered hers briefly. And why will make them pay? Ryan had been less enthusiastic about their impromptu war room. He divided his time between helping with research and casting worried glances at the growing closeness between his sister and Andrew. This morning, he'd finally confronted Joy in the kitchen while Andrew was on a conference call. You're falling for him, Ryan had said, not bothering with preambles. Joy had busied herself making coffee, avoiding her brother's knowing eyes. We're working together to bring down Kane. Joy. Ryan's tone had made her look up. I see how you look at him, how he looks at you. This is more than an alliance. She couldn't deny it. Something had shifted between her and Andrew, moments of connection that went beyond their shared mission. Fingers brushing while exchanging documents, late-night conversations that strayed from strategy to personal histories. A growing understanding that neither had anticipated. He's not what people think, Joy had said finally. Not entirely. Maybe not, Ryan had conceded. But parts of him are exactly what people think. The dangerous parts, Joy. The parts that have kept him alive in his world. Now, as the sun set on their third day at the estate, Joy found herself alone with Andrew in the study once more. Ryan had finally succumbed to exhaustion and retreated to his room. The house was quiet, save for the occasional report from security patrols via Andrew's phone. We're making progress, Andrew said, leaning back in his chair and rubbing his eyes. He looked exhausted but satisfied. With what we've assembled, plus what's coming in on that shipment, we can finally take Kane down. Joy set down her pen, stretching arms that had gone stiff from hours of note-taking. When is the shipment due? Tomorrow night, Andrew replied. My men will intercept it before it reaches the harbor. Something in his tone made Joy look up sharply. You're going yourself, aren't you? Andrew met her gaze steadily. I need to ensure nothing goes wrong. It's too dangerous, Joy protested. Kane's watching for you. He knows you're close, which is precisely why I need to be there. Andrew's voice was gentle but firm. I've been hunting this evidence for 3 years, Joy. I can't trust anyone else with it. Fear clutched at Joy's heart. The thought of Andrew walking into danger made her physically ill, a realization that confirmed what she'd been trying to deny for days. She cared for him, deeply, perhaps too deeply. Then I'm coming with you, she said, the words out before she could reconsider. Andrew was already shaking his head. Absolutely not. You're safer here. I'm not asking permission, Joy replied, her chin lifting in the same defiance that had first caught his attention. My father died for this. I have a right to be there when it ends. They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, Andrew's expression softened. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, he said, a reluctant smile touching his lips. You wouldn't have it any other way, Joy countered. His smile deepened, sending warmth through her. No, I wouldn't. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Andrew moved first, crossing to where she sat and crouching before her chair so they were eye to eye. Joy, he said softly. If something happens to me tomorrow. Don't, she interrupted. Nothing's going to happen. Listen to me. His hand found hers. If something goes wrong, there's a safe in my bedroom. Behind the landscape painting. The combination is your birthday. I changed it after I met you. His admission sent a flutter through her chest. Inside is everything you'd need to finish this. Take it to FBI Special Agent Ramirez in the Boston office. Only her. She can be trusted. Joy squeezed his hand. We'll deliver it together. Andrew studied her face, as if memorizing every detail. Then, with deliberate slowness, he raised his free hand to her cheek. You've changed everything, he murmured. You know that, don't you? Joy leaned into his touch, her heart racing. So have you. The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable, as natural as breathing. Andrew's lips were surprisingly gentle against hers, the hand at her cheek trembling slightly. Joy responded without hesitation, her fingers threading through his hair, drawing him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Andrew rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the night you told me I didn't dare shout at you, he confessed. Joy laughed softly. Even though I ruined your shirt? Because you ruined my shirt. Because you weren't afraid. Because you really saw me when most people only see what I can do for them or to them. The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep in Joy. For a man with Andrew's power to be vulnerable was no small thing. She kissed him again, briefly, sweetly. "Promise me something," she whispered against his lips. "Promise you won't take unnecessary risks tomorrow. I promise to come back to you." Andrew replied. The solemnity in his tone was both reassuring and frightening, the vow of a man who didn't make promises lightly. They worked for another hour, but the dynamic had shifted. Casual touches became commonplace. Shared glances carried new meaning. When exhaustion finally overtook them, Andrew walked Joy to her room, his hand warm at the small of her back. At her door, he kissed her once more a goodnight that felt like a beginning. "Tomorrow," he said, "we end this. And then we figure out what comes next," Joy finished, echoing his words from days earlier. His smile was the last thing she saw before closing her door, a smile that held hope, a rarity for a man like Andrew Vega. Inside her room, Joy leaned against the door, her fingers touching her lips where his had been. She knew she should be questioning her feelings, reminding herself who Andrew was, what he'd done. The rational part of her brain insisted this was madness. But her heart recognized something in Andrew that transcended rationality. A man trying to be better. A man fighting for justice in the only way he knew how. A man who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. She was so lost in thought that she almost missed the subtle vibration of her phone. A text message from an unknown number. "Your father deserved better than to have his daughter sleeping with his killer. Ask Vega what really happened the night Martin Callahan died." A friend. Joy stared at the message, her blood turning to ice. It had to be Kane, trying to drive a wedge between her and Andrew, a desperate ploy as they closed in on him. And yet, doubt, insidious and poisonous, crept into her mind. Andrew had known her father, had met with him the night before the accident, had somehow acquired all his evidence. The phone vibrated again. The coastal road, the rain, the failed brakes. "Ask him." Joy sank onto the bed, the phone clutched in her trembling hand. Tomorrow they would intercept the shipment that would bring down Ivan Kane. Tomorrow justice would finally come for her father. Unless she was helping the wrong man. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind replaying every conversation with Andrew, searching for inconsistencies, for hidden truths. By dawn, she knew what she had to do, what her father would expect of her. She had to ask Andrew directly, had to see his face when she did. Because if there was even a chance the message was true, everything between them had been built on a foundation of lies. And Joy Callahan had spent enough of her life in the dark. Morning light filtered through the blinds, finding Joy already dressed and waiting. She hadn't slept. The text messages had seen to that, their poisonous insinuations eating away at her newfound trust in Andrew. She heard him before she saw him footsteps in the hallway. A brief conversation with security, the sound of his study door opening. Drawing a deep breath, Joy stepped into the corridor, the phone clutched in her hand like evidence. Andrew looked up from his desk as she entered, his face brightening momentarily before registering her expression. "Joy? What's wrong?" She held out the phone wordlessly, watching as he read the messages. His face remained impassive, but she caught the subtle tightening of his jaw, the flash of anger in his eyes. "Kaine," he said, setting the phone down carefully. "He's getting desperate." "Is it true?" Joy asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Andrew met her gaze directly. "No, one word. Simple. Definitive." "Then tell me what happened that night," Joy pressed. "The night before my parents' accident. When you met with my father." Andrew gestured to the chair across from his desk. Joy remained standing, unwilling to cede even that small advantage. After a moment, he nodded, accepting her choice. "Your father came to me with evidence of Kane's trafficking operation," Andrew began. He'd been building his case for months, documenting irregularities in shipping manifests, unusual patterns in container inspections. But he'd hit a wall. He needed access to financial records, client lists, things he couldn't get as harbor master. "So he came to you," Joy said. "Why? Why not go directly to the FBI?" "Because he'd tried," Andrew replied. "Twice. Both times his reports were buried. That's when he realized Kaine had people on the inside, law enforcement, customs officials, maybe even federal agents." Joy frowned. "So he turned to a criminal instead?" "He turned to someone he knew couldn't be bought by Kaine," Andrew corrected. "Someone with resources to help him gather the final pieces of evidence he needed." "And you agreed? Just like that?" Joy's skepticism was evident. Andrew's expression darkened. "Human trafficking is a line I never cross, Joy. Your father knew that. It's one of the rules that governs my operations." He paused, That. And he had leverage. What leverage? Information about one of my early shipments, Andrew admitted. Nothing illegal, but questionable, enough that he felt confident approaching me. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Your father was a brave man, not unlike his daughter. The comparison sent an unexpected pang through Joy's heart. So you met 3 times, and the last meeting was the night before the accident. Andrew nodded. We met at a dockside warehouse. Martin gave me copies of everything he'd gathered, and told me he had a contact at the FBI's Boston office who'd agreed to meet him off the record, someone he believed was clean. Agent Ramirez, Joy realized, remembering the name Andrew had mentioned. Yes, he was driving to Boston the next morning. Andrew's voice grew quieter. He never made it. The text mentioned failed brakes, Joy said, watching his face carefully. Andrew's expression remained open, unflinching. The official accident report cited brake failure due to poor maintenance, but I had my people examine the wreckage after it was released. The brake line had been cut professionally, to look like wear and tear. Joy's breath caught. You investigated my parents' deaths? Of course I did, Andrew said, as if it should have been obvious. Your father came to me for help, Joy. His death under those circumstances made it my responsibility to find out what happened. And you determined it was Kane, Joy said, still not entirely convinced. I traced the order back to one of his lieutenants. Andrew confirmed. A man named Reznikov who specializes in making murders look like accidents. He disappeared 2 weeks after your parents died, reassigned to Kane's operations overseas. The methodical detail in Andrew's explanation was compelling, but Joy needed more. Why didn't you go to the police with this? To Agent Ramirez. With what proof? Andrew asked. A cut brake line that could have been damaged in the crash? A suspicious reassignment? My word against Kane's? He shook his head. I needed something concrete, the kind of evidence your father was gathering. So I continued his work, building the case file by file, lead by lead. For 3 years, Joy said softly. For 3 years, Andrew confirmed. Until the night a waitress refused to let me shout at her, and I realized she had her father's eyes. The simple statement hit Joy with unexpected force. You knew who I was, that first night at the Silver Spoon. Andrew nodded slowly. Not immediately. But when Diana mentioned your last name, I checked. I've kept tabs on you and Ryan since the accident discreetly, from a distance, making sure Kane never connected you to your father's investigation. That's why you bought the restaurant, Joy realized. Not because of me, but because you wanted to protect me. Initially, Andrew admitted, though my reasons became more personal with time. Joy sank into the chair she'd previously refused, the weight of revelations becoming too much to bear standing. Why didn't you tell me any of this? When we started working together on the case, would you have believed me? Andrew asked simply. If I'd approached you at the beginning and said, hello, I knew your father. I've been investigating his murder for years. And by the way, I've been watching over you from afar. Would you have trusted me? Or run in the opposite direction? Put that way, the answer was obvious. I would have thought you were manipulating me. Exactly. Andrew leaned forward, his eyes intent on hers. I needed you to form your own opinions, Joy. To see who I am without that history coloring everything. It made sense, a twisted, complicated sense that aligned with everything she'd learned about Andrew Vega. A man who played the long game. A man who protected what he valued. A man who had been fighting for justice for her family while she remained completely unaware. I believe you, Joy said finally, the admission feeling like both surrender and victory. Relief washed over Andrew's features, followed quickly by determination. Kaine is trying to separate us before tonight. He knows together we're stronger. Then he's failed, Joy said firmly. What's our plan? The tension in the room dissipated as Andrew outlined the night's operation. They would intercept Kaine's shipment at a private dock north of the city. Andrew's team had already infiltrated the crew. The handoff would be quick, clean, and if all went well, undetected until they were safely away with the evidence. Once we have the documents, we take them directly to Agent Ramirez, Andrew concluded. By morning, Kane will be in federal custody. It sounded straightforward enough, but Joy could sense the calculated risks beneath the simple explanation. And after? What happens to you, Andrew? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I have an arrangement with the federal authorities. Immunity in exchange for my testimony and evidence against Kane. But your other businesses, your other activities, are being restructured as we speak, Andrew finished. I told you, Joy. You've changed everything. I've been dismantling the more problematic aspects of my operation for weeks now. The admission sent warmth spreading through her chest, dissolving the last of her doubts. Before she could respond, Ryan appeared in the doorway, sleep-rumpled and concerned. "Joy, you okay? I knocked on your door and—" He stopped, taking in the scene before him. "What's going on?" Joy quickly explained about the text messages and Andrew's clarification about their father's death. Ryan listened, his expression shifting from suspicion to grudging acceptance. "So it's happening tonight," he said when she finished. "The shipment interception," Andrew nodded. "Your sister has insisted on accompanying me. Then I'm coming too," Ryan said immediately. "No." Joy and Andrew spoke in unison. Ryan crossed his arms. "He was my father too, Joy. Which is exactly why you need to stay here," Andrew interjected smoothly. "If something goes wrong, which it won't," he added, seeing Joy's expression. "We need someone who knows the full story. Someone who can take the evidence to Ramirez. A backup plan," Ryan realized. "Precisely." Andrew's tone was respectful, treating Ryan as an equal partner rather than a younger sibling to be protected. "You'll have direct communication with us throughout. Any sign of trouble, you alert security and begin emergency protocols." The strategy was sound, and after some debate, Ryan reluctantly agreed. The rest of the day passed in careful preparation, reviewing maps, synchronizing communications, ensuring every contingency was covered. As evening approached, Joy found herself alone with Andrew in the garage as his team prepared the vehicles. He'd changed into dark clothing that somehow made him look both more dangerous and more vulnerable. "Last chance to stay behind," he said quietly, checking his weapon, a sleek handgun that disappeared into a shoulder holster beneath his jacket. "Not happening," Joy replied, adjusting her own dark clothing practical attire Andrew had provided for the mission. He studied her face, then nodded once. "Stay close to me. Do exactly as I say. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong," Joy interrupted, echoing his own reassurance from earlier. Andrew smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his features. "With you by my side? I'm starting to believe that." He kissed her, then not the gentle exploration of the previous night, but something deeper, more urgent. "A promise, a declaration, for luck," he murmured against her lips when they finally broke apart. "We make our own luck," Joy replied, repeating one of his favorite phrases. His smile widened. "Indeed we do." The convoy departed as darkness fell. 3 unmarked SUVs with tinted windows, each carrying members of Andrew's security team. Joy sat beside Andrew in the lead vehicle, Yuri driving with silent efficiency. As they left the estate's security behind, Joy watched the familiar landscape of Westport Harbor appear and then recede as they headed north along the coast. Her heart should have been racing with fear, but instead, she felt strangely calm. Whatever happened tonight, she was exactly where she needed to be, following her father's last investigation to its conclusion, bringing justice to his killers. And she was with Andrew, complicated, dangerous, extraordinary Andrew, who had been fighting this battle for years before she even knew it existed. "We're 10 minutes out," Yuri reported from the driver's seat. Andrew squeezed Joy's hand briefly. "Remember, stay close, follow my lead, and if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments." Joy nodded, though they both knew she was unlikely to abandon him, regardless of the danger. The private dock appeared ahead, a small, isolated landing illuminated by a few security lights. A cargo vessel was already moored there, crew members moving about the deck. "Right on schedule," Andrew murmured, his focus sharpening visibly. He checked his phone. "Our man on board confirms the package is in the captain's quarters. Standard handoff procedure." The SUVs parked in a secluded area a short distance from the dock. Andrew's team deployed with practiced efficiency, taking up positions that gave them full coverage of the area without being obvious. "Ready?" Andrew asked, his eyes meeting Joy's. She nodded, pushing away the last whispers of doubt and fear. "Let's finish this." As they stepped out into the night air, Joy felt the weight of her father's legacy on her shoulders. For Martin Callahan, for her mother, for Ryan, for the future she was just beginning to imagine might be possible, she would see this through to the end. Even if that end was nothing like what any of them expected. The private dock stretched before them, eerily quiet despite the activity on the cargo vessel. Andrew moved with silent confidence, Joy following close behind as they approached the lone security guard at the entrance. The guard, a burly man with a scar across his left cheek, nodded in recognition. "Mr. Vega," he said quietly. "They're expecting you." A chill ran down Joy's spine. Something felt wrong. Andrew sensed it too, his posture tensing imperceptibly. "Who's expecting me, Donovan?" The guard's eyes flickered nervously to Joy, then back to Andrew. Captain says to come aboard. Package is ready. Andrew's hand moved subtly toward his concealed weapon. Radio Yuri, he murmured to Joy. Code yellow. As Joy reached for the radio clipped to her belt, a familiar voice cut through the night air. That won't be necessary, Miss Callahan. Ivan Kane emerged from the shadows near the vessel's gangplank. He was tall and lean, his silver hair gleaming under the dock lights, his tailored coat incongruous against the industrial setting. 2 men flanked him, weapons visible at their sides. Kane. Andrew positioned himself slightly in front of Joy, his voice calm despite the obvious trap. This is unexpected. Is it? Kane's smile was cold, calculating. I think not. You've been remarkably predictable lately, Andrew. All because of this young woman. His gaze shifted to Joy, assessing her with clinical interest. Martin Callahan's daughter. How poetic. Joy's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. You murdered my father. Such directness, Kane remarked. I see why Andrew finds you fascinating. He gestured toward the ship. Shall we continue this discussion on board? Your men have already been accommodated. The implication was clear. Andrew's team had been compromised, possibly captured or worse. And if we decline? Andrew asked, his tone conversational despite the tension radiating from him. Kane sighed theatrically. Then Yuri Torres, currently held at gunpoint in your vehicle, dies immediately. As does young Mr. Callahan, who I believe is waiting anxiously back at your estate. Ice flooded Joy's veins. Ryan, what have you done to my brother? Nothing yet, Kine assured her. My men are simply visiting. His continued health depends entirely on your cooperation. Andrew's expression remained impassive, but Joy could sense his rapid calculation of options, risks, possibilities. Finally, he nodded once. Lead the way. As they followed Kane aboard the vessel, Andrew's hand brushed Joy's, a subtle reassurance. They were escorted to the ship's main cabin, a surprisingly luxurious space with polished wood paneling and leather furnishings. Inside, Joy's worst fears were confirmed. Yuri sat bound to a chair, a cut above his eye but otherwise unharmed. Several of Andrew's security team were similarly restrained along the cabin's perimeter. 2 of Kane's men stood guard, weapons ready. You've gone to considerable trouble, Andrew observed, taking a seat when Kane gestured to a leather armchair. Joy remained standing beside him, unwilling to appear comfortable in this hostile environment. You left me little choice, Kane replied, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter. Your investigation was becoming inconvenient. Murder usually is, Andrew said mildly. Kane's smile tightened. Speaking from experience, I presume? What do you want, Ivan? Andrew's patience was visibly thinning. You've clearly been planning this ambush for some time. What I want is simple. Kine set down his glass and leaned forward. The Firebird files. All of them. Every piece of evidence you've gathered these past 3 years. Joy couldn't contain her surprise. You know about the Firebird files? Of course, Kine said, looking amused. I've known about Martin Callahan's little code name for his investigation since before he died. It was, after all, the reason he had to be eliminated. The casual admission of her father's murder sent rage coursing through Joy. She stepped forward, only to be stopped by Andrew's hand on her arm. The files aren't here, Andrew said. They're secured elsewhere. Kine's expression hardened. Then, perhaps Miss Callahan would like to call her brother and explain the situation. I'm sure young Ryan would appreciate hearing her voice, while he still can. Joy's phone appeared in Kane's hand, taken from her during their boarding. He held it out, his intent clear. Call Ryan, verify his situation, force Andrew to cooperate. With trembling fingers, Joy took the phone and dialed. 2 rings, then Ryan's voice, tense but alive. Joy? Where are you? Ryan? Are you okay? Her voice cracked despite her efforts to stay calm. I'm fine. A pause. There are men here. They say I'm not to leave the house. Before Joy could respond, Kane took the phone back. Satisfied? He asked, ending the call. Now, about those files. Andrew studied Kane, his expression calculating. The files are in a secure location. Release Joy and her brother, and I'll take you to them. A noble gesture, Kane mocked, but not one I'm inclined to accept. You see, I need insurance. Miss Callahan provides that quite effectively. Then we're at an impasse, Andrew said calmly. Kine's smile returned, more predatory than ever. Not quite. He nodded to one of his men, who produced a laptop and opened it. Perhaps this will motivate you. The screen showed security footage of Andrew's estate, specifically the study where they'd spent days working on the case against Kane. In the footage, Men in tactical gear were systematically searching the room, removing documents, photographing evidence. "My team is quite thorough," Kane commented. "Whatever you've compiled against me will be mine within the hour. However, I know you, Andrew. You'd never keep all your evidence in one location. So I need the rest, particularly the original Firebird files Martin Callahan passed to you before his unfortunate accident." Joy watched Andrew's face, saw the minute shifts in his expression that most would miss. He was buying time, waiting for an opportunity. "And if I provide these files?" Andrew asked. "What guarantee do I have that you'll release Joy and her brother unharmed?" "You have my word," Kaine said smoothly. "Forgive me if I find that insufficient," Andrew replied, "given your history of eliminating witnesses." Kaine's eyes narrowed. "You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Andrew, but I'll be generous. Provide the files, and I'll release the Callahans to federal custody. Let them deal with their misguided accusations while I handle my business elsewhere." "Federal custody?" Joy interrupted. "What are you talking about?" Kaine seemed genuinely surprised. "He hasn't told you?" He looked at Andrew with mock disappointment. "How dishonest of you, Andrew, keeping secrets from your new love." "Don't listen to him, Joy," Andrew said, his voice tightly controlled. "Detective Harper has been building a case against Andrew for years," Kane continued, ignoring him. "With my assistance, of course. Anonymous tips, circumstantial evidence, nothing concrete enough for an arrest, but enough to keep the good detective obsessed." Joy's mind raced. "Harper thinks Andrew killed my father," she realized aloud. "You've been framing him all along." "Framing implies innocence," Kaine replied. "I merely redirected suspicion where it served my interests." The pieces clicked into place. Harper's warnings, his conviction of Andrew's guilt, his approach to Ryan years ago, all manipulated by Kaine to obscure his own involvement. "That's why you sent me those text messages," Joy said, anger rising. "You wanted me to doubt Andrew, to create division between us before tonight. A calculated risk that unfortunately failed," Kane acknowledged. "You're more trusting than your father was, or perhaps just more naive." Joy's hands clenched at the casual cruelty in his tone. Before she could respond, the cabin door opened, and one of Kaine's men entered, whispering urgently in his ear. Kaine's expression darkened. "It seems we have company. The FBI has just arrived at the dock, along with Detective Harper." Andrew didn't react, his composure perfect. Joy, however, couldn't hide her confusion. They hadn't contacted the FBI yet. The plan had been to secure the evidence first. "You're doing?" Kaine asked Andrew sharply. "Insurance policy," Andrew replied calmly. "If I didn't check in every 30 minutes, certain information would be automatically forwarded to Agent Ramirez. I assume she assembled a team rather quickly." The sound of vehicles arriving, of orders being shouted, filtered through the cabin walls. Kaine's calm facade cracked, revealing the ruthlessness beneath. "This changes nothing," he said, drawing a weapon from his jacket. "Either you provide the location of the original Firebird files, or Miss Callahan dies before the FBI reaches this cabin." Andrew stood slowly, positioning himself between Joy and Kane's gun. "The files are in a safe deposit box at First National Bank, Downtown Branch, Box 1547. The key is in my desk at the estate, hidden compartment in the top right drawer." Kaine studied him for signs of deception. Finding none, he nodded to one of his men. "Confirm it." As the man stepped away to make a call, shouting outside grew louder. The FBI was boarding the vessel. "Time is short, Ivan," Andrew said, his voice steady despite the gun pointed at him. "Your operation is finished. The smart play is to use what leverage you have left to negotiate terms." For a moment, indecision flickered across Kane's features. Then his expression hardened into something cold and final. "You're right about one thing, Andrew. Time is indeed short." He shifted his aim toward Joy. "But I've never been one to leave loose ends." Everything happened in a blur. Andrew lunged forward as Kaine squeezed the trigger. Joy heard the shot, saw Andrew jerk as the bullet struck him instead of her. He stumbled but continued his momentum, tackling Kaine to the ground as the cabin door burst open and FBI agents rushed in, weapons drawn. "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Kane's men surrendered immediately, outgunned and surrounded. But Joy saw none of it. Her entire focus was on Andrew, who had rolled off Kaine and now lay on the cabin floor, crimson spreading across his shirt. "Andrew!" She dropped to her knees beside him, hands pressing against the wound in his shoulder. "Stay with me. Help is here." His eyes found hers, pain evident but consciousness intact. "Ryan," he managed. "Check on Ryan." "Agent Ramirez is already at the estate," said a voice above them. Joy looked up to see Detective Harper, his expression a complex mixture of satisfaction and confusion. "Your brother is safe." Paramedics pushed past, taking over from Joy's inadequate first aid. As they worked on Andrew, Agent Ramirez, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, approached. "Miss Callahan," she said, her tone professional but kind. "Your father would be proud of you." Joy stared at her in surprise. "You knew my father?" Ramirez nodded. "He was scheduled to meet with me the day he died. I've been working with Mr. Vega ever since, building the case against Kane." The revelation stunned Joy. "You've been working with Andrew?" But Detective Harper thought. "Detective Harper," Ramirez interrupted, shooting a pointed look at the man, "has been pursuing his own theory, against explicit instructions to stand down. His investigation nearly compromised years of work." Harper had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The evidence pointed to Vega," he insisted, though with less conviction than before. "Evidence carefully planted by Kane," Ramirez countered. She turned back to Joy. "Mr. Vega has been a confidential informant in our investigation since your father's death. His immunity agreement was signed 3 years ago." As the paramedics prepared to move Andrew to a stretcher, his hand caught Joy's. "I wanted to tell you," he said, his voice weak but urgent, "about Ramirez, about the immunity deal. But I couldn't risk it until we had Kane." "It doesn't matter now," Joy assured him, squeezing his hand. "Just stay with me, okay? Stay with me." His eyes held hers, a promise in their depths, despite the pain clouding them. "Always," he whispered, as the paramedics lifted him away. As they escorted her from the cabin, Joy passed Ivan Kane, now handcuffed and flanked by federal agents. He watched her with cold calculation, even in defeat. "This isn't over, Miss Callahan," he said quietly as she passed. "Men like me have long memories." Joy stopped, meeting his gaze directly. "So do I," she replied, her voice steady despite her fear. "And I'll be at every day of your trial, watching justice finally come for my father." Outside on the deck, the night air was cool against Joy's face, the dock now swarming with FBI agents and police. As they loaded Andrew into an ambulance, Agent Ramirez approached again. "We'll need your statement," she said. "But it can wait until tomorrow. I've arranged for you to ride with Mr. Vega to the hospital. Your brother will meet you there." Joy nodded gratefully, too emotionally exhausted for words. As she climbed into the ambulance beside Andrew's stretcher, their eyes met once more. Despite the pain medication beginning to dull his senses, his gaze was clear, focused entirely on her. "Thank you," she whispered, taking his hand. "For everything. For justice for my father, for protecting Ryan, for coming back to me." A small smile touched his lips. "I promised, didn't I?" The ambulance doors closed, and they were moving, sirens wailing into the night. 3 years of searching, of hidden investigations, of secrets and lies, had finally come to an end. Ivan Kane would face justice for Martin Callahan's murder. The trafficking operation would be dismantled. The truth, at last, had come to light. But as Joy sat beside Andrew, watching his breathing steady under the paramedics' care, she knew this wasn't truly an ending. For her and Andrew Vega, the most dangerous man in Westport Harbor, and the only one brave enough to fight for justice when no one else would, this was just the beginning. 6 weeks later, Joy stood before the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the collar of her navy blue blazer. The formal outfit felt strange after years of restaurant uniforms, but today called for something official, something that conveyed respect for the gravity of the moment. "You look great," Ryan said from the doorway. Her brother had aged somehow in the past weeks, the boyish college student giving way to a more serious young man. The events of that night on the dock had changed them both. "Thanks," Joy replied, smoothing her hair. "Ready?" Ryan nodded, jingling his car keys. As ready as anyone can be to watch a murderer plead guilty. The courthouse was crowded. Reporters clustered on the steps, hoping for a glimpse of Ivan Kane, the respected businessman whose empire had crumbled virtually overnight. Joy and Ryan bypassed them, directed to a private entrance by one of Agent Ramirez's team. In the weeks since Kane's arrest, the case against him had grown exponentially. The evidence from the ship, combined with Andrew's meticulous files and testimony from Kane's former associates eager to save themselves, had created an airtight prosecution. Facing multiple life sentences, Kane had finally agreed to plead guilty in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Inside the courtroom, Joy immediately spotted Agent Ramirez, who nodded in greeting. Detective Harper sat nearby, his expression subdued. Their relationship had been strained since that night, his years of suspicion toward Andrew difficult to simply dismiss, though he had formally apologized to Joy for his mistaken theories about her father's death. "Miss Callahan." The voice behind her was familiar, smooth as ever despite what he'd endured. Joy turned to find Andrew approaching, looking almost normal save for the slight stiffness in his left shoulder, a lingering reminder of the bullet he'd taken for her. "Mr. Vega," she replied formally, aware of the eyes watching them. Then, unable to maintain the pretense, she smiled. "You look better." "Physical therapy works wonders," he said, returning her smile, with a warmth reserved solely for her. "Are you ready for this?" Joy nodded. "I've been ready for 3 years. I just didn't know it." They took their seats in the front row, Joy between Ryan and Andrew. The casual observer might not notice Andrew's hand briefly covering hers, or the way she leaned slightly toward him, small gestures that spoke of a connection forged in danger and strengthened in its aftermath. When Ivan Kane entered, flanked by marshals, Joy felt a chill. Despite his prison jumpsuit and shackles, he maintained a dignified posture, his eyes sweeping the courtroom with cold calculation. When his gaze landed on Joy and Andrew, the hatred there was palpable. The proceedings were swift and procedural. Kane entered his guilty plea in a clear, emotionless voice. The judge accepted it, scheduling a sentencing hearing for the following month. And just like that, it was over. Justice for Martin Callahan, delivered in less than 20 minutes of legal formality. Outside, reporters swarmed Andrew, shouting questions about his role in bringing down Kane's operation, about the rumored immunity deal, about his own business future. Joy and Ryan slipped away during the commotion, waiting by the car. "It doesn't feel real yet," Ryan admitted as they watched the media circus from a distance. "Dad's been gone for 3 years, and now suddenly, it's like everyone knows the truth." "Not everyone," Joy corrected gently. "Just enough people." "The right people?" Ryan studied his sister's face. "Including Andrew Vega." "Yes," Joy agreed. "Including Andrew." "You're in love with him," Ryan said. It wasn't a question. Joy didn't deny it. What would be the point? "It's complicated. It always will be, with him." Ryan's tone wasn't judgmental, merely factual. "Are you sure that's what you want, Joy? A life that's always going to be complicated?" Before she could answer, Andrew appeared, having finally extracted himself from the reporters. "Vultures," he muttered, joining them by the car. No offense to actual vultures. Despite herself, Joy laughed. These glimpses of humor, rare but genuine, were part of what had drawn her to him, evidence of the man beneath the carefully constructed exterior. "Thank you both for being here today," Andrew said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "It matters that Martin's family witnessed this. We couldn't have done it without you," Ryan acknowledged, extending his hand. The gesture wasn't merely polite, it represented the tentative truce they'd established since that night. Not friendship, not yet, but a mutual respect born of shared purpose. Andrew shook Ryan's hand, then turned to Joy. "May I have a moment?" Ryan took the hint gracefully. "I'll wait in the car." When they were alone, Andrew's composure softened. "How are you?" "Really, relieved," Joy admitted. "Sad, grateful." She met his eyes. "A bit lost, if I'm honest." "Lost?" Andrew questioned. "For 3 years, my focus was Ryan's education, keeping us afloat. Then these past weeks, it's been the case, the trial, making sure Kine faces justice." She shrugged slightly. "Now what?" "Now," Andrew said gently, "you get to decide what you want. Your brother's scholarship is secured. Your father's killers are facing justice. You're free, Joy, truly free. Perhaps for the first time since your parents died." The realization washed over her. He was right. The weight she'd carried for so long, financial stress, responsibility for Ryan, unanswered questions about her father's death had lifted, leaving her oddly weightless. "What about you?" she asked. "What happens to Andrew Vega now that his 3-year mission is complete?" Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. "That depends largely on you." "On me?" "Joy." Andrew's voice was soft but intent. "These past weeks while I've been recovering, restructuring my businesses, finalizing my arrangements with the federal authorities, all of it has been leading to this moment, to asking you a question." Joy's heart quickened. "What question? What do you want? From life? From me?" He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes. "Because I find myself in the unprecedented position of wanting to build a future around your answer." The directness of his question took her breath away. "Andrew, Your life is so different from mine. Your world is changing," he interrupted gently. "Has been changing since the night you told me I didn't dare shout at you. The legitimate businesses are thriving. The rest has been systematically dismantled or transferred to trusted associates. My agreement with the FBI is finalized." "And Detective Harper?" Joy asked. "The police will be watching me closely for years," Andrew acknowledged. "But they'll find nothing to justify their suspicions. That part of my life is over, Joy." "Just like that?" She couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. Andrew's smile was rueful. "Not just like that. It's been a methodical process, begun long before we met. Your father's case gave me purpose, direction, a reason to become something better than what circumstances had made me." He took her hands in his. "You asked what I want. I want a life where I don't have to hide who I am or what I do. I want morning coffee without looking over my shoulder. I want to use my resources to build something lasting, something good." His eyes held hers. "And I want you beside me while I do it. If that's what you want too." Joy felt tears gathering. "You make it sound so simple." "It won't be," Andrew assured her. "There will be complications, challenges, people who remember who I was rather than seeing who I'm becoming. But I'm willing to face all of it, if you are." A car horn honked Ryan, growing impatient in the parking lot. "I need to think," Joy said, overwhelmed by the moment, by the choice before her. Andrew nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." He pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Go. Your brother's waiting." As Joy walked to the car, she felt Andrew's eyes following her, patient yet hopeful. Inside, Ryan raised an eyebrow but didn't comment on whatever he read in her expression. "Home?" he asked simply. Joy looked back at Andrew, standing solitary on the courthouse steps, and made her decision. "No," she said. "There's somewhere else I need to go first." 30 minutes later, Joy stood before her parents' graves, flowers in hand. She hadn't visited in months, too busy working, surviving, keeping Ryan's future secure. Now, with autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet and the late afternoon sun warm on her face, she knelt before the shared headstone. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, Dad," she said softly. "It's done. Kane pleaded guilty today. He's going to prison for the rest of his life." She arranged the flowers carefully. "I know it doesn't bring you back, but I hope it brings some peace." The cemetery was quiet, peaceful. A gentle breeze stirred the trees. "I met someone," Joy continued. "I don't think you'd approve, Dad, at least not at first. He's complicated, has a past. But he fought for you when no one else would. Risked everything to bring Caney to justice." She touched the cool marble of the headstone. "And he loves me. Really loves me, I think." Saying it aloud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I don't know what the right choice is," she admitted. "But I do know that life is short and unpredictable. You taught me that." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I miss you both. Every day. I hope I've made you proud." As she stood to leave, Joy felt a strange sense of peace. Not closure, she would always miss her parents. Always wonder about the years they should have had, but acceptance. They were gone, but their legacy lived on in her. In Ryan, in the justice finally served, and perhaps in the choice she was about to make. The silver spoon was busy when Joy arrived, the dinner service in full swing. Diana spotted her immediately, hurrying over with a mixture of surprise and concern. "Joy, we weren't expecting you today. Are you all right? We heard about the plea deal on the news." "I'm fine," Joy assured her. "Is he here?" Diana's expression softened with understanding. "In the private dining room. Just finished a business meeting." She squeezed Joy's arm. "Go on." The private dining room was separated from the main restaurant by frosted glass doors. Through them, Joy could make out a solitary figure. Andrew, standing by the window overlooking the harbor, hands clasped behind his back, waiting, though he didn't know for what or whom. Joy pushed through the doors without knocking. Andrew turned at the sound, surprise, registering briefly before his expression settled into something more guarded, more hopeful. "Joy," he said simply. "This is unexpected." She crossed the room to stand before him, heart hammering with certainty and terror in equal measure. "I've made my decision." Andrew remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. "And? I want morning coffee without looking over my shoulder," Joy said, echoing his words from earlier. "I want to build something lasting, something good." She stepped closer, close enough to see his breath catch. And I want you beside me while I do it." The tension drained from Andrew's shoulders, relief and joy transforming his features. "You're sure? My world is complicated," Joy finished for him. "Always will be, but so is life." She reached for his hand. "I don't want easy, Andrew. I want real." He pulled her to him then, his kiss conveying everything words couldn't: gratitude, hope, promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Andrew rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Joy Callahan," he said quietly. "Have since the moment you told me I didn't dare shout at you." Joy laughed, the sound bright in the quiet room. "Terrible timing, falling for a waitress who spilled wine on your suit." "Best timing," Andrew corrected. "Just when I needed someone to remind me what matters." Outside the window, the lights of Westport Harbor sparkled across the water. The same view Joy had seen countless times while serving tables, now transformed by new perspective, new possibility. "So what happens now?" she asked, still holding his hand. Andrew smiled, not the calculated expression he showed the world, but something genuine, almost boyish in its hope. Now we begin." And as they stood there, the notorious Andrew Vega and the waitress who had changed his world with a single act of defiance, Joy knew they were writing a new chapter not just in their own lives, but in the story of Westport Harbor itself, a story that had begun with spilled wine and spoken truth, a story that was just beginning. The grand opening of the Callahan Community Center was scheduled for 2 p.m., but Joy had been awake since dawn, too anxious to sleep. 6 months had passed since Ivan Kane's guilty plea, 6 months of transformation, of rebuilding, of creating something new from the ashes of the past. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," Ryan observed, watching his sister pace the kitchen of her new apartment. Unlike the cramped space she'd once shared with him, this was a spacious waterfront condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Westport Harbor. One of many changes in Joy's life. "Everything needs to be perfect," Joy replied, checking her notes for the 100th time. "This isn't just any ribbon cutting." Ryan smiled, understanding her anxiety. The community center represented more than just a building. It was Martin Callahan's legacy, a phoenix risen from the darkness of his murder. "Dad would be proud," he said simply. "Of the center, of you, of everything you've accomplished." Joy paused her pacing, studying her brother's face. Ryan had changed these past months too, more confident, more focused. The scholarship Andrew had secured had opened doors beyond academics, connecting Ryan with engineering mentors who recognized his talent. He'd already been offered a position at a prestigious firm upon graduation, his future secure in ways Joy had once only dreamed possible. "We did this together," she reminded him. "The center was your idea." It had been. 3 months after Kaine's plea, during a family dinner, Ryan had suggested using part of the settlement money from the civil suit against Kaine's estate to create something meaningful for the community, something that would honor their father while helping others. The Callahan Community Center was the result of a multi-purpose facility in the East District where Andrew had grown up, offering job training, counseling services, after-school programs, and resources for families in need. The perfect memorial for a man who had given his life fighting for justice. Joy's phone chimed with a text from Andrew, almost finished at the office. "Meeting you at the center at 1:30. Everything okay?" She smiled, typing back. "Just nervous. See you soon." Their relationship had evolved over these months steadily, carefully, both of them navigating unfamiliar territory. Andrew had kept his promise, systematically reshaping his business empire into something legitimate, something he could be proud of. The transition hadn't been seamless. Old associates had questioned his new direction. Competitors had sensed weakness and tried to capitalize. But Andrew had anticipated the challenges, had prepared for them with the same meticulous attention to detail that had characterized his pursuit of Kane. And through it all, Joy had remained by his side not as a silent partner, but as an equal, challenging him when necessary, supporting him always. "You know Diana's closing the Silver Spoon for the afternoon so the staff can attend," Ryan said, interrupting her thoughts. "Your old co-workers wouldn't miss this for anything." The mention of the restaurant brought a wave of nostalgia. Joy had worked her final shift there 3 months ago, when her new position at the community center had become full-time. From waitress to executive director, another transformation she was still adjusting to. "We should get going," she said, gathering her notes and purse. "I want to do one final walkthrough before the guests arrive." The community center stood on what had once been abandoned warehouse property. Andrew had acquired it years ago through one of his companies, holding it unused until the perfect purpose presented itself. The renovation had been extensive, transforming the industrial space into a welcoming facility with natural light, open areas, and specialized rooms for various programs. As Joy and Ryan approached the building, she felt a surge of pride. The banner above the entrance read simply, "Callahan Community Center Building Stronger Futures." Beneath it, a plaque commemorated Martin Callahan, whose commitment to justice inspired this space. Yuri met them at the door, no longer serving as Andrew's security chief, but as the center's head of operations. Like many in Andrew's former organization, he'd found a new role in the legitimate enterprises, his skills repurposed for community protection rather than criminal activities. "Everything's ready," he reported. "Caterers are set up, press has checked in, dignitaries will arrive by 1:45. Joy nodded her thanks, moving through the building with practiced efficiency. Each room had been designed with specific purposes in mind. Counseling offices where victims of domestic violence could find safety and support, classrooms where adults could learn new skills for better employment, recreational spaces where children could play safely after school while their parents worked. In the main hall, where the ceremony would take place, Joy paused before a large photograph of her father. Martin Callahan smiled from the frame, his harbor master uniform crisp, his expression both serious and kind. The image had been taken a year before his death, at a community safety event at the docks. "I hope we got it right, Dad," she whispered. "You did." Joy turned to find Agent Ramirez approaching, formal in a dark suit but smiling warmly. Over the months of preparation for Kane's sentencing and the subsequent civil suit, Ramirez had become an unexpected ally and friend. "This place would make Martin proud," Ramirez continued. "It addresses the root causes of the very issues he was fighting against." "That's the goal," Joy agreed. "Prevention, not just intervention." They were interrupted by the arrival of more guests, Detective Harper among them, still awkward around Joy but making an effort. His investigation into Andrew continued, but with diminishing energy as months passed with no evidence of illegal activity. By 1:25, the center was filling with guests, city officials, community leaders, former colleagues of Martin's from the Harbor Commission. Joy greeted each one personally, accepting congratulations and deflecting praise to the team that had made the center possible. At exactly 1:30, Andrew arrived. He moved through the crowd with easy confidence, shaking hands, exchanging pleasantries. To the casual observer, he appeared merely a successful businessman supporting a community initiative. But Joy saw what others missed. The careful way he positioned himself in rooms, always aware of exits, the subtle assessments of new faces, the protective glances toward her, old habits formed by years of navigating dangerous waters. When he reached her side, his public smile softened into something more genuine. "The place looks amazing," he said, taking her hand discreetly. "How are you holding up?" "Nervous," Joy admitted. "Public speaking isn't exactly my forte," says the woman who stood up to the most feared man in Westport Harbor without blinking. His teasing was gentle, his eyes warm with pride. "You'll be magnificent." Before Joy could respond, Diana appeared, elegant in a dress rather than her restaurant manager's uniform. "Almost time," she announced. "The mayor just arrived." The ceremony itself was brief but powerful. The mayor spoke about community renewal. Agent Ramirez shared carefully edited anecdotes about Martin Callahan's commitment to justice. Ryan talked about his father's legacy living on through service to others. Then it was Joy's turn. Standing at the podium, facing the assembled crowd, she felt a momentary panic. Then her eyes found Andrew in the front row, his steady gaze anchoring her. Beside him sat Ryan, his encouraging smile a reminder of why they were here. 3 years ago, Joy began, her voice finding strength with each word. "My father discovered something terrible happening in our harbor. Instead of looking away, instead of deciding it wasn't his problem, he took action. That decision cost him his life, but it also set in motion events that would eventually bring justice, and, now, healing." She gestured to the space around them. "This center isn't just a memorial. It's a commitment to continue the work my father began, to fight the conditions that allow exploitation and violence to flourish, to build a community where everyone has access to opportunities and support." As Joy continued her speech, she noticed Detective Harper watching Andrew with a complex expression, suspicion mixed with grudging respect. Nearby, Andrew's former competitors observed with calculating eyes, still trying to understand his transformation from feared power broker to community benefactor. The criminal world of Westport Harbor was adjusting to the vacuum left by both Kiney's imprisonment and Andrew's reformation. Some had attempted to claim Andrew's former territories, only to find federal authorities mysteriously well-informed about their activities. Others had seen the shifting winds and begun their own transitions to legitimacy, following the path Andrew was blazing. Today, we open these doors not just to remember what was lost, Joy concluded, but to create what can be. Together, we build a stronger harbor, a safer community, a future worthy of my father's sacrifice. The applause was thunderous. As Joy stepped back from the podium, Andrew moved forward for the ceremonial ribbon-cutting, the primary donor whose financial support had made the center possible. His speech was brief, businesslike, giving no hint of his personal connection to the project beyond philanthropy. Only Joy knew the full truth: how he had sat with her night after night during the planning stages, how he had redirected resources from his legitimate businesses to support the center's programs, how he had leveraged connections to secure additional funding and political support. After the ceremony, as guests toured the facility and enjoyed refreshments, Joy found herself momentarily alone in her new office. Through the window, she could see the harbor in the distance, the same waters her father had patrolled, the same docks where she and Andrew had faced Kane 6 months earlier. "There you are," Andrew said from the doorway, 2 champagne flutes in hand. "Hiding from your admirers?" Joy smiled, accepting the glass he offered. "Just taking a moment to process it all. Sometimes I can't believe how much has changed." Andrew joined her at the window. Having second thoughts? The question was casual, but Joy heard the vulnerability beneath it. Despite everything they'd built together, Andrew still carried the fear that she would eventually regret choosing a life connected to his. "Not one," she assured him, linking her fingers with his. "Though I do miss serving overpriced wine to entitled customers occasionally." He laughed, the sound still rare enough to be precious. "I'm sure Diana would take you back in a heartbeat." "I'm happy where I am," Joy said softly. Andrew studied her face, seeming to search for something. "Even with the complications, the lingering suspicions, Harper watching my every move?" "Even with all of it," Joy confirmed. "I told you once, I don't want easy. I want real." The tension in Andrew's shoulders eased. He raised his glass. "To real, then, in all its messy glory." They clinked glasses, the moment private despite the crowd just beyond the office door. In 6 months, they had built something neither had imagined possible that first night at the Silver Spoon, a partnership based on truth, on shared purpose, on the understanding that redemption was a journey, not a destination. There would be challenges ahead. Andrew's past would continue to cast shadows. The business world remained skeptical of his transformation. Detective Harper's suspicions might never fully disappear. But standing there with Joy, watching the community center come alive with the very people it was designed to serve, Andrew Vega felt something he had almost forgotten existed. Hope, not just for himself, but for the future they were building together, a future where the spilled truth of that first confrontation had become the foundation for something extraordinary. The night air carried a hint of autumn's approach as Joy and Andrew walked along the waterfront promenade. 2 hours of mingling with donors and officials at the center's opening had left them both craving quiet, space, the simple pleasure of being alone together. "Ryan seemed to hit it off with that engineering executive," Andrew observed, his hand comfortable in Joy's. "The one from Harrington Development?" Joy smiled. "He's been networking like crazy since you introduced him to your business associates. I barely recognize my shy little brother sometimes." "He has your determination," Andrew said, just expressed differently. They continued in companionable silence, passing the illuminated facades of restaurants and boutiques that lined the harbor's edge. Westport Harbor at night was beautiful lights reflecting on the dark water, boats swaying gently at their moorings, the distant sound of jazz from a waterfront club. "Remember our first real date?" Joy asked as they approached the Silver Spoon, now closed for the evening but still lit inside as staff cleaned up. Andrew smiled at the memory. "You were terrified someone would recognize us and start rumors, insisted on a restaurant 30 miles away. And you complied, even though you thought it was unnecessary." "I would have taken you to another continent if that's what you'd asked," Andrew admitted. "I was just grateful you'd agreed to see me at all after everything that happened." Their courtship had been careful, deliberate, both of them aware of the complications, the scrutiny, the whispers that followed them. Joy had insisted on maintaining her own apartment, her financial independence. Andrew had respected her boundaries, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. But over months of shared meals, quiet evenings, and the gradual building of trust, something profound had grown between them, something that transcended their unlikely beginning. "I have something to show you," Andrew said as they reached the end of the promenade. "A surprise." Joy raised an eyebrow. "The last time you surprised me, I ended up with a community center to run. Nothing quite so dramatic, he promised, guiding her toward his car parked nearby. They drove in comfortable silence through the city, eventually turning onto a tree-lined street in one of Westport Harbor's older neighborhoods. The homes here were substantial but not ostentatious historic properties with character, rather than the modern mansions that dominated the North Shore. Andrew pulled into the driveway of a Victorian-style house, set back from the road, its wraparound porch illuminated by soft lighting. The property was clearly well-maintained, but had a lived-in quality that distinguished it from Andrew's sleek, modern condo downtown, or his secured estate outside the city. "Whose house is this?" Joy asked as Andrew killed the engine. "That depends," he replied cryptically, coming around to open her door. "Come see." The interior was even more surprising than the exterior. Furnished comfortably rather than lavishly, it had an immediate sense of home, hardwood floors gleaming with age and care, built-in bookshelves filled with actual books, a kitchen that looked designed for cooking rather than showcasing. "Andrew," Joy said slowly, taking it all in. "What is this place?" He moved to stand beside her in the center of the living room, his expression a mixture of uncertainty and hope she rarely saw. "It's a possibility," he said quietly. "A different kind of home, one without security systems on every window, without panic rooms or escape routes, without the weight of your past." Joy finished for him, understanding dawning. "A normal home," Andrew nodded. "I've owned it for years through a shell corporation. No connection to my public properties. Detective Harper doesn't know about it. Neither do former associates or competitors." Joy wandered through the space, trailing her fingers along the solid oak banister of the staircase, peering into rooms furnished with antiques and comfortable seating. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "But I don't understand. Why are you showing me this now?" Andrew joined her at the foot of the stairs, taking both her hands in his. "Because today, watching you at the community center, I realized something. You've built a new life, Joy, a life of purpose, of meaning. You've honored your father's legacy while creating your own path." He paused, seeming to gather courage. "And I want to do the same. I want to build something real with you, something that isn't shadowed by who I was or what I did, something that's just us." Joy's heart quickened. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking more than that." Andrew reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "I'm asking you to build a life with me. Here, in this house that has no history, no connections to my former world. A clean slate." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was elegant in its simplicity, a single diamond set in platinum, beautiful without being ostentatious. "Marry me, Joy. Not because of our shared past or what we've survived together, but because of the future we could create." Joy stared at the ring, momentarily speechless. They had discussed a future together in abstract terms, but this concrete step, this commitment, was unexpected. "What about your businesses, your other properties?" she asked, practical concerns surfacing even as emotion tightened her throat. "The legitimate operations continue," Andrew explained. "The estate remains as a decoy somewhere Harper and others can watch, believing they're tracking me while we build our real life here. The condo downtown becomes an office space." He'd thought of everything, planned for every contingency. The strategic mind that had once orchestrated criminal enterprises now focused on creating safety, normalcy, a future untainted by his past. "This neighborhood is good," he continued when she remained silent. "Close to the community center, excellent schools nearby for someday, perhaps." The implication hung in the air between them, a future that might include not just marriage, but family, children, generations beyond their own. Joy looked around the house again, seeing it with new eyes, not just as a property but as a possibility, a promise, a home where they could truly begin again. "What about your enemies?" she asked quietly. "People who might still want to harm you, or use me to get to you." Andrew's expression sobered. "There will always be risks. I won't pretend otherwise. But Kane was the most dangerous, and he's gone. The others have either accepted my transition, or been dealt with through legal channels. Yuri still oversees security, albeit more discreetly now." He squeezed her hands gently. "I can't promise absolute safety, Joy. No one can, but I can promise that every decision I make, every step I take, will be to protect this life we're building, to ensure that our future isn't defined by my past." The sincerity in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes, moved Joy deeply. This was Andrew Vega at his most authentic, the man who had emerged from the ashes of the feared crime boss, who had chosen redemption over power, love over fear. "Remember when I asked what you wanted?" After Kaine's arrest, Andrew continued softly. You said you wanted to build something lasting, something good. That's what I'm offering now, a partnership in creating that. Together. Joy looked from the ring to Andrew's face. Seeing both the man he had been and the man he was becoming, she thought about her father, about what he would say if he could see this moment. Would he approve of this choice, this man? She thought he might. Martin Callahan had valued justice, yes, but also redemption, had believed in second chances, had seen potential in unlikely places, including, apparently, in Andrew Vega himself, when he'd sought his help all those years ago. Yes, Joy said finally, her voice steady despite the tears gathering in her eyes. Yes, I'll marry you. The relief and joy that transformed Andrew's features was worth every doubt she'd overcome, every obstacle they'd faced. He slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that trembled slightly. Andrew Vega, who never showed weakness, allowing himself this moment of naked emotion. When he kissed her, it felt like a beginning, not their first, perhaps, but the most significant. A conscious choice to build a future together, eyes open to the challenges but hearts committed to the journey. Later, as they explored what might become their home, Joy found herself in what would be their bedroom, staring out the window at the slice of harbor visible between buildings. The same waters where her father had worked, where she had confronted Ivan Kane, where everything had changed on a rainy night 3 years ago. Having second thoughts? Andrew asked softly from the doorway. Joy turned to him, smiling. No, just reflecting on how we got here. If you hadn't come to the Silver Spoon that night, if I hadn't stood up to you, if you hadn't spilled wine on my favorite suit, Andrew added with a rare teasing smile, everything would be different, Joy concluded. My father's killer might still be free. I'd still be working 3 jobs. Ryan wouldn't be thriving in school. And I'd still be the man I was, Andrew said quietly. Feared but empty. Powerful but alone. Joy crossed to him, placing her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm. Do you ever miss it? The power? The control? Andrew considered the question seriously, as he did all her questions. Sometimes, he admitted. Not the criminal aspects, but the certainty. The clear lines between enemies and allies. The simplicity of that world, brutal as it was. His honesty was one of the things Joy valued most, his refusal to pretend he'd undergone some magical transformation into someone entirely new. Andrew Vega would always carry elements of his past self, the strategic mind, the protective instincts, the capacity for calculated action. But he had chosen to redirect those qualities toward building rather than controlling, protecting rather than threatening. This life is messier, Joy acknowledged. More complicated, but infinitely more worthwhile. Andrew replied, covering her hand with his own. I told you once that you were the first real thing I'd encountered in years. That hasn't changed, Joy. You grounded me in reality when I'd been living in shadows. A sudden thought struck Joy. The community center opening, the house, the proposal, you planned all this for today, didn't you? The anniversary of that first night at the Silver Spoon? Andrew smiled, caught. I thought you hadn't realized. I didn't, until just now, Joy admitted. You're not the only one who can be strategic, you know. His laugh was warm, genuine. One of the many reasons I love you. As they stood there in what would become their bedroom, in a house that would become their home, Joy felt a sense of completion, not an ending, but a circle closing to create space for new beginnings. She had changed Andrew, yes, but he had changed her too, helped her find strength she hadn't known she possessed, purpose beyond mere survival, love beyond what she'd thought possible. 6 months ago, standing on that dock as federal agents arrested Ivan Kane, Joy had known her life was irrevocably altered. What she hadn't known was how much beauty would emerge from that chaos, not despite the danger and darkness, but because of what they had overcome together. So, Andrew said, his arms slipping around her waist, when do we tell Ryan he's going to have a brother-in-law? Joy laughed. Tomorrow. Tonight is just for us. As they left the house that would become their home, hand in hand under a sky full of stars, Joy Callahan thought about the unlikely path that had brought her here from a waitress, standing her ground against a dangerous man, to a woman who had found her purpose, her voice, her partner, all because she had dared to speak truth to power, all because of wine spilled and truth revealed, all because some storms, no matter how devastating, clear the way for new growth, new life, new beginnings. And this was just the beginning of their story.